it was kind of a thing in the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of R-rated properties, which are like 15 or 18 equivalent in Britain, into toy lines and cartoons for kids, which was tantamount to admitting that kids were watching him on VHS back then.
Did you just say that Rambo was a cartoon?
Yeah, Rambo: The Force for Freedom was a toy line.
Was it as violent as the films?
Surprisingly, it's actually well thought of as 20-minute long toy advertisement cartoons for kids based on a mentally scarred Vietnam vet goes.
Hello and welcome to our first podcast with Something Wicked. I'm Chad and I'm joined here today by Jason.
Hello, Chad.
And we've come to speak about our first encounters with film, just film in general. We're going to talk about cult film, horror film, good films, even bad films. So I'll let Jason start because he's the man that taught me everything I know about horror films with how he got into film.
I suppose I got into films like everyone, just simply by watching them as a child. The first one I can actually remember seeing in the cinema is The Jungle Book, or not an initial release before you say I'm not that old, one of the many re-releases.
That's the Disney one?
The Disney animated Jungle Book, and it would have been, I imagine, around about 1975, 1976, something like that. I was lucky enough to see a lot of what people consider the massive cult films in the cinemas these days. I have vague memory of seeing Star Wars: A New Hope in the cinema, but I've got a clear memory of jumping up and down during the trench run at the end. And I've got a very clear memory of Empire and from then on, from seeing that in the cinema. Films, they're just a wonderful form of escapism.
Is it your favourite kind of form? Would you prefer books, film?
It depends. Yeah. I'm not a great believer when people say, give us your top 5 such and suches, give us your favourite things, because there's a time and a place for everything.
Yes.
You can get something from a film that you can't get from a book, and vice versa, a comic, and any other piece of art, a song. So everything has its place, most definitely.
So what were the films you've seen sort of growing up in? Obviously you went to the old cinema in the town that I'm from, and you've seen a lot of classics there. So what was some of the sort of like cult classics that you would have watched?
Well, initially it was always, it was generally what films my parents would take me and my older brother to. I mean, I remember seeing Ghostbusters in the cinema. I saw all the Indiana Jones in the cinema. Actually, it's quite naughty because Gremlins, on its initial release in Britain, was a 15, and I was 12 when I went to see it just after Christmas of the year of its release, which was what was wonderful about the old rail cinema. They didn't.
What's it rated now, Gremlins?
I think it's still a 15, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, I think it is, because when you actually look back at it, it is actually like watching a live action Looney Tunes.
Yeah, but they put them in the microwave and
everything.
Up,
they don't hold back.
No.
But I remember that once I was old enough and I had my own income, I think, ironically, the first probably big sort of cult adult film I saw, it could be Highlander, or, because Highlander was 86, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, Highlander was 86, but I went with a friend. And that was my first legal 15 I saw in Chester.
Which had Christopher Lambert and late Sean Connery.
Clancy Brown.
And
Roxanne Hart.
The sequels were not as good as the first.
They don't exist. I can actually genuinely say the first time I was truly disappointed coming out from the film was after seeing Highlander 2. And I just thought, honestly, what was that? Really, what was that?
How many Highlander sequels are there?
There's Highlander 2, Highlander 3, The Sorcerer with Mario Van Peebles, which I also saw in the cinema. Then there was, I think the TV series started off.
Yes, which is also pretty bad.
Yeah, from what
in my opinion, sorry.
You had the one where where was it? Oh, the guy who played Duncan MacLeod in the TV series beheads Connor MacLeod, Christopher Lambert's character, and was that Highlander Endgame?
I think so.
I don't think I've ever...
It's sort of just a bad blur for me, those films.
I've blotted all that. I don't think I've even watched that beyond the title scene.
What, I'm getting off topic there, sorry.
Yeah,
The whole thing about Highlander then. But after that, what sort of else have you seen in the cinema? That
Well, funnily enough, that the one film that I went, the big cult adult film that I went to see by myself was, I was dropped off by my folks because I would have been about, I think, 16, I think, at the time, and I was going to watch the Master of the Universe film, because I absolutely love all Master of the Universe.
You did. I can vouch for that.
And it was, I got there and I could see it was obviously going to be packed full of kids, with ironically me being 16. I thought, oh, I'm not going to do that. So the Old Mill Cinema only had 2 screens. What do you think I went to see instead?
Something that's not Masters of the Universe.
Predator.
Oh, it's a classic, Arnie.
Which I didn't know much about going into.
Okay.
I loved, because it was an Arnie film. I'd seen Conan on VHS back in the day, and I came out of that film blown away. It was like, oh my God.
So what year would that have been?
I think it was 87.
Yeah.
Because I think the same year that I went to see RoboCop in the cinema in Chester.
Classic.
Yeah, which was, again, sneaking in. They were a lot less strict back then. If you look vaguely old enough, to let you in to watch a film. Yeah, it was, it's always better to see a film on the big screen.
Yes, yeah.
And get the full surround sound, the full
You
the
get
full experience.
immersed in it, don't you? You feel like you're in the film.
Yeah,
It's always cool.
Yeah, basically, yeah, that's it. I mean, I was part of what you might call the video generation.
Yes, yeah.
Which it was. I mean, it's very difficult to explain to a man of your youth, a sprightly 25,
Thank you.
that we had to wait for films to come on television, and we had to actually set aside time, because we had to go and watch them. We didn't have a way to record them. So when the first VHSs came along, it was absolutely mind-blowing. And it's, I look back at the VHS era with a certain amount of fondness, because I've rewatched quite a lot of the films from back then, and I just thought, God, I was easily satisfied watching them.
Yeah,
I mean, there was some bona fide classics in there, which I probably would never have seen for years if you'd wait for them to come on British television. But there was an awful lot of.
What channel would they have come on back then? Like, if you wanted to watch like a certain like big horror movie, what channel in Britain?
I mean, it was strange, because I remember the launch of Channel 4.
Okay.
But also, I mean, you had your main channels, but I mean, especially with BBC Two, they used to have horror showings on Saturday nights. They'd have a horror double bill, and that's where I remember seeing a lot of what you'd call the classic horror films from like the 70s backwards, you might say. And then when Channel 4 came along, Channel 4, even before it launched, they were running trailers for what they were showing, and there was trailers for cult films like The Cars That Ate Paris and things like that. And these are things that I'd always bought science fiction encyclopedias, or had them given to me as gifts when I was young. So I'd seen stills from these films. So I had absolutely no idea what the film was like. I mean, there was The Cars That Ate Paris, Slaughterhouse-Five, which is based on a very famous novel.
Yes, yeah.
And to actually see them moving, and not just to see the pictures from them or guess what they were about, was kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, especially like sort of like around that time as well.
Oh, yeah.
That sort of like age, you read the books, you want to see them in all their glory kind of thing. Yeah,
but it was a wonderful time for film, because of your free access to it almost. And also, I remember pre-Video Recordings Act as well, before the censorship ban hammer came down.
Was that the Video Nasties and things like that?
In '84. I remember, I mean, seeing The Exorcist probably when I was about 11 or 12.
Such a great age.
And it scared the life out of me. I mean, and it did for a good few years afterwards, because I remember going to, I mean, it was a misconception it was banned. It was just that it was never released on video, and cinemas could apply for private screenings of The Exorcist. So we'd go along to these famous midnight screenings. I still remember getting freaked out by them.
Well, it's quite funny you mention that, because the first ever horror film I watched was The Exorcist. Like a lot of people, I was about 5 or 6, and my dad I've still got the exact same DVDs, so the DVD's about 20, 19 years old. It's one of those horrible ones that you've got the clip and it's made out of cardboard, you know, the ones I'm on about. Doesn't work.
A
but
Jones family relic.
Yeah, I've kept it as like a sentimental piece more than anything. The disc scratched the ribbons. But I sat outside because we had them like wooden doors and they had like window panes in them. I just sat in the hallway and watched it all. And when it was done, because my dad hates horror movies, my mum's a massive fan of films. She got me into him, and she turned. My dad came and turned the light on, and I was just sat in the hallway shivering, just watching as the credits were rolling. I had this blanket around me, hugging my teddy. I was like 5 or 6 at the time, and I remember not sleeping for days after that as well. But like I said, I've still got the DVD now, which is always nice to look back on.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, which is pretty cool.
And when Isaac's 6 years old, you're going to sit him down.
Which was next year. Another thing I wanted to speak to you about, Jason, was you went to Black Sunday.
Black Sundays.
Black Sunday. What did you see there? Because I know they were quite big things. That's not going anymore, is it?
No, it was around about late 80s, and I mean, I went 1990 to probably 92, and they were a horror film festival held in Ashton-under-Lyne, which is in the Greater Manchester area. And they'd start at 12 o'clock Saturday night, and they'd finish 6 o'clock Sunday evening. Cool. So, and we generally get 10 horror films, and they were advanced screenings, sometimes world premieres or British premieres. And they were great fun if you had the stamina to stay awake.
Just keep going, yeah.
We'd go in there with like 2 carrier bags full of food.
Did you ever make it for the whole night kind of thing?
I think we do. We drop asleep in a few of them.
Yeah.
But in things like that, I was lucky enough to see. I'm trying to think back now to the very first one, which would have been, I think, about February or March
of 1990.
1990, and in that one, I know we got to. There was Society we saw.
No, with the shunning, is it called?
The shunting.
Shunting, that's it, yeah. That's a great film. That's a great film.
Aged surprisingly well.
Yes, very well, yeah.
I think we got A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 Dream Child. I think we might have got the Robert Englund Phantom of the Opera.
My wife, her waters broke to that film.
Yeah. Sentimental value again.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I know I saw it before I saw it in real cinema, so I'm pretty sure I must have seen it at a Black Sunday. I think there was the Peter Weller Leviathan.
Right, I've never seen that.
Aqua horror.
You have told me to watch that before, but I've never got around to it.
We got to see a couple of films by a guy called Jörg Butznicker, who's quite infamous.
What's he done? His name's really
Necromantic.
Oh yes, I've seen Necromantic. And Necromantic too.
We got to see them on the big screen. Which
I mean, they're quite weird to watch on a normal size screen. So I mean, on something like. But at the same time, I wouldn't say they were necessarily bad films. I mean, I've always got a bit of a soft spot for Necromantic 1 and 2.
The thing about Necromantic was that was the last film they showed at that Black Sunday, the first one I went to. And you've got to realise that we'd been there for nearly 16, 17...
So your brain's already mush at this
16,
point.
17 hours, we'd seen countless cinematic atrocities, you might say. We didn't think anything would shock us.
Yeah, some necrophilia. Let's push that on the table.
The final sequence in Necromantic was just, the whole cinema cheered. It was just like, oh my God, you've shocked us.
Heck of a bomb to go out on that and a mic drop on that film. Yeah.
It was like, oh my Lord.
Was that one of your favourite films you sort of seen at the Black Sunday then?
It's, I don't know really. I suppose it is films like Society and Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and because I'd only seen Nightmare on Elm Street 4 in real cinema. Okay. It must have only been 6 months beforehand because they were churning them out at that point. And of course, and this was an advanced screening, so it was well in advance. The funniest thing about the Black Sundays though was the very last one we went to. It was kind of like a mini Black Sunday, but they held on a Saturday afternoon, and this was only 4 films, and the 4 films that they showed was it opened with Cool World, which was...
That one with Brad Pitt with the cartoons, yes.
Ralph Bakshi as well, if you know that. I won't tell you what the second film was. The third film was Brain Dead, Peter Jackson.
Great film.
Great film. To see that on the big screen. Yeah. The 4th film was Candyman. Again,
great film, Tony Todd.
Yeah. Now, the second film got introduced as because the guys would come out who put the festival on. They said, this is a first-time filmmaker, goes, this film owes a lot to Hong Kong cinema, the likes of John Woo and things like that.
Right.
And it was Reservoir Dogs. So we got to see it I think it was about 3 or 4 months before it arrived in this country, before all the furor and things like that, you know.
Reservoir Dogs is obviously a classic now.
Yeah, and bearing in mind that was the non-genre film that was shown and that just got so warmly accepted. Because in actual other Black Sundays we'd seen, I think it was A Better Tomorrow 2, which was a John Woo one with Chow Yun-fat, and the same one, I think we saw Mr. Vampire 4, which the Mr. Vampire films are kind of like the Chinese equivalent to Freddy Krueger at the time, but it's older.
I've seen some YouTube videos about it. I've never watched any of them.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I'll have to get around to watching them. I have always had them on my list, but I've just sort of. But now the man said it, I'll watch it.
Yeah, it was. By the time they got to 4, it was even more of a comedy than the other ones were.
So was the first one like sort of straight?
Kind of,
but not at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. It was. It's kind of sinister. But it's got light relief and the main characters. I'm remembering. I'm trying to remember all this now. The main character in Mr. Vampire 4, I think he's the Taoist priest or the Buddhist priest who's fighting the undead. He's a supporting character that only pops in and out of the first film, and he's a bit. He's a very competent priest at fighting the undead, but he's a bit slapstick at the same time.
Is he sort of like that Peter Cushing sort of character?
I'd probably say more Peter Sellers.
Yeah, so he's there to sort of destroy Mr. Vampire. Is that his name, Mr. Vampire, did you say?
I don't think they actually named the vampire.
Okay, I thought you said his name. What's the film called?
Mr. Vampire.
Oh, it is called Mr. Vampire. That's why I got confused then when I said that.
I'm not sure what the actual Chinese translation is, or because Chinese translates in so many interesting ways.
It does, yes.
So I think that might be like the closest English approximation they can make to it. I mean, for all I know, the Chinese translation might be the radiant vampire who leaps through the falls, you know, and they can just do that in one word, which is the beauty of Chinese.
My first forte into film as well, before the Exorcist debacle in my house, would have been Babe and Babe Pig in the City.
Saw Babe in the cinema.
Classic films.
Yes. Man that made Mad Max as well.
I know, but I only found out the other day. I said to Alex,
isn't it?
Yeah, I tried to show my son it, obviously Isaac, and he didn't want anything to do with it.
Wasn't Paw Patrol.
Well, yeah, I was like, Babe, what a classic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sort of like got me not onto horror.
Kids today, by the way?
Yeah. So yeah, after the sort of the Exorcist happened, my mum started showing me the Sci-Fi Channel.
Good parenting.
When the Sci-Fi Channel wasn't SYFI, it was SC. FI, and they showed really good movies late at night, so I got to see things like Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which is the best of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Sorry, it's the first one.
And yeah, then one of my favourite films I ever watched on Sci-Fi was Dog Soldiers, the Neil Marshall film.
Again, I saw that in the cinema show.
Yeah, very jealous about that. It's one of my favourite films.
I hope I give you the shits.
Yeah, great
That's a great final word.
Obviously I met Sean Pertwee at HorrorCon. You met him as well, didn't you, actually?
I chatted to him in Wrexham. Lovely guy.
Yeah, great guy. Obviously his dad's John Pertwee. He was
big
one of the
Doctor Who fan myself.
And Hazel Gummidge, I found out the other day.
Even more mind-blowing.
Have you got any other films you want to sort of let us know what you've seen? And because obviously you've been in this sort of genre of film for a long time. I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying you've been around the block a few times watching films. Is there any other films you've seen in the cinema that you'd like to boast about?
The strange thing about film is because it is accessible to everyone. And you can, I remember going to see the Full Monty on opening night before it blew up, you might say, because this was 96, and a group of friends and myself, we'd always go Friday night to the cinema before we went out, or before, it was just like, we'll go and watch a film. And it was quite funny because the first film we saw in 1996, and we said, right, we'll start going to the cinema, was Seven. So,
as in the Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, that was the highest grossing film the year I was born.
Yeah.
So, and, I'm not saying you're old again, Jason, I'm just saying.
Suffice to say that we came at that shell-shocked.
Yes, it's very, very good
but
film.
We saw films like From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Desperado.
I've only just watched that recently.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I
film.
never got around to watching it. And then one of my friends was like, watch this, it's pretty fun. Which is, it's Robert Rodriguez, that,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. Well, I mean, that came out within, I don't know, it was a couple of months from Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were released very close together.
A lot of people get it mixed up that they think Quentin Tarantino directed Dusk Till Dawn. Well, I found in my sort of like talking to people, I was like, oh, that's a Quentin Tarantino film, but it's actually Robert Rodriguez, isn't it? I think Quentin Tarantino wrote it, though,
He wrote the script, yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
The one bad thing about From Dusk Till Dawn is I think they should have kept the vampires out of the trailer, because it is a truly...
I obviously, by the time I was old enough to watch Dusk Till Dawn, I knew sort of what it was about.
It was also because George Clooney always says he's very grateful to Robert Rodriguez for giving him the break, because he was known as... I think he was just known for, what's the
Return to Slaughter High.
No! Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was...
Oh, I didn't know he was in that. I just knew he was in Return to Killer High.
Ironically,
Slaughter High, sorry.
Ironically, I remember seeing the George Clooney Killer Tomatoes film on VHS, and his performance does stand out in it.
Who is he in that? See, I really didn't know he was in that.
I can't remember what he's playing, but
he's got a big role in it, then I take it.
I think it's a big supporting role,
Right.
but there's a sequence in it where he's driving a van, and he turns, and it's obviously he's looking at the cameraman, and he gives a very cheesy, self-conscious grin and turns back and carries on driving, and it's kind of break the fourth wall moment that we were all sat in a friends, and we just fell about laughing watching that.
I've never got around to watching the Attack of the Killer. I watched the cartoons. There was a bit of a dodgy cartoon about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
I think that might have been part of the early 90s push where they turn a lot of
like Beetlejuice,
R-rated films.
Tales from the Crypt as well. They turned into a cartoon. That was weird.
Well, Rambo: The Force for Freedom, where it was kind of a thing in the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of R-rated properties, which are like 15 or 18 equivalent in Britain, into toy lines and cartoons for kids, which was tantamount to admitting that kids were watching him on VHS back then.
Did you just say that Rambo was a cartoon?
Yeah, Rambo: The Force for Freedom was a toy line.
Was it as violent as the films?
Surprisingly, it's actually well thought of as 20-minute long toy advertisement cartoons for kids based on a mentally scarred Vietnam vet goes.
So another one, because obviously you mentioned before, Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
I've never really been into He-Man, and that was that a film first or a cartoon first?
It was a toy line first.
It was toy line first. So
And
it's sort of the same thing again. They were trying to sell the toys, and they were like.
And it was, I mean, especially if you look into canon films, because canon films were, I mean, they were the kings of schlocky B movies.
Right.
And there's an awful lot of controversy over the funding of Master Universe between Canon Films and Mattel. But Canon Films, I absolutely loved them in the VHS era. And again, Life Force, which
you did show it. Naked Space Vampires. That's how you sold it to me.
Yeah, Naked Space Vampires.
The 3 words, you just like, listen, watch this.
But how many big actors are in it, though?
Patrick Stewart. Young Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
There's a few others as well. I liked what's Colonel, the main guy there.
Colin Firth, is it? He's one of the Firths.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, he's a badass anyway. I really
Steve
like
Railsback, who plays the astronaut, was a very well-respected American actor. Frank Finlay is in it as well.
Tobe Hopper directed that, didn't he?
Tobe Hopper was part of his 3-picture deal for Canon Films.
Which was the other one was
Invaders from Mars, the remake.
And then Texas Chainsaw 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, which, again, I remember seeing Invaders from Mars when it got released on VHS, and I'd had no warning about it. I was just, it's Invaders from Mars, sat and watched it and thought, that was an amazing remake.
Well, the only reason I watched those two is because they both came onto Netflix, and you were like, Chad, Invaders from Mars and Life Force watching Naked Space Vampires. I was there. And then watched it, and I really liked Life Force. I liked Invaders from Mars, but I really enjoyed Life Force. Again, talking about that trilogy, I know me and you talk about this a lot, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is better than 1.
No, one.
I mean, you've had many of debate over this.
Many. I respect your judgments, though I question it.
We're in the little theatre in Rill, aren't we,
Yeah,
Jason? Which
yeah.
is a staple of Rill, which is one of my favourite places to be with the team, who've helped us a lot, who are behind the camera at the moment.
Hello.
And we're part of a group where we put on films. We've got Wicked Cinema, which puts on films for kids, like normal films, not cult films like us weirdos. And then we've got Wicked Cult, which is run by Rob, who should be here hopefully on our next podcast. And he's shown films like Taxi Driver, Gremlins, stuff like that. And then I run Frightening Fridays, which obviously horror films. And yeah, we're just happy to be here. Everyone's really nice, and we're going to do a recommendation for you now. I don't know if Jason's got one with being our guest. Have you got a recommendation for everyone?
Little known science fiction stroke horror called Kill Command.
Kill Command.
British made.
Okay.
Vanessa Kirby, who's one of the stars in it, she's gone on to much bigger things. And imagine a cross between Terminator and Predator. You can obviously tell they don't have a lot of money, but they use it really well. And I think it deserves a lot more press than whereas, I mean, I peruse horror and science fiction websites for recommendations, and I remember watching it, and yeah, funnily enough, I don't know if the director has gone on to do more stuff I should really check out, but he's someone to watch, I think.
Perfect. So Kill Command. Have a little watch. Leave a little comment below in our comment boxes. I'm new to this, as you can tell, and let us know what you think. And like, subscribe, share, and if you want us to review anything in particular, you can find me on Instagram at the Pope of Horror, or find us on Facebook, Wicked Cinema Wales, Wicked Cult Cinema, Frightening Fridays. Yeah, thank you and cheers, and don't forget to subscribe.